They're dead. But Massachusetts seemed to have a bit of Lazarus in it. It is in the process of rising from the grave. The legislature has approved a bill which would increase income taxes, sales taxes, and gasoline taxes to the tune of $1.2 billion this fiscal year. Part of the bill would extend the sales tax to 594 services, such as legal and accounting services, never before taxed. The governor wants the state's Supreme Judicial Court to tell him whether the bill is constitutional. If it is, he says he'll sign it. How will the increase affect our state's politics this fall? Most importantly, how will it affect our already wounded economy? We'll try and answer those questions this morning, but first here's some background from News 7's Byron Barnett.
Anything you want, so much along the show now.
Angry reaction tonight from around the Commonwealth to the proposed $1 billion-plus tax package. But today, Governor Dukakis put the legislature's tax bill in limbo by announcing he won't sign it until he gets an opinion from the state's Supreme Judicial Court on whether the tax bill is legal.
I think it is very, very important that we resolve those issues now, that we clear away any doubt as to the constitutional validity of the package as it relates to the tax on services.
We asked for an opinion from the Supreme Court on the constitutionality of the sales tax on services 6 weeks ago, and neither the governor nor the Democratic leadership were very interested then in finding out whether this piece of junk is even constitutional.
In question is the portion of the tax bill that would expand the state's 5% sales tax to a broad range of services, such as tourist information bureaus, telephone answering services, amusement parks, golf driving ranges, and fees over $20,000 for attorneys, architects, engineers, and accountants. Landscaper Steve Gold says a sales tax would be bad for his business.
I have to charge my customers 5% more, and I would assume that they would consider it almost an increase in their current charge rather than as a tax, and it's going to make it harder for me to cover my own costs.
And health-conscious members of the Beacon Hill Athletic Club could, for example, pay an extra $33 in sales tax to pump iron next year.
The irony, of course, is that we put a tax on weight reduction now, but keep the tax off of candy bars and let people to get fat.
As for political fallout, News 7 analysts George Bachrach and Martin Linsky agree the continued delay in solving the state's fiscal crisis is bad news for Democrats.
It's going to look bad for Evelyn Murphy and Frank Bellotti. I think the benefit accrues to the outsiders like John Silber and Steve Pierce. Just point a finger at the system and say this stinks.
If the tax bill is still an issue come Labor Day, then I think Democrats will have a huge albatross, even if John Silber is the nominee.
Joining me this morning to talk about the tax bill are Barbara Anderson, who is, as you all know, a staunch tax opponent. She is executive director of Citizens for Limited Taxation. Jim Braude heads a pro-tax organization called Tax Equity Alliance of Massachusetts. Peter Torkildsen is a state representative who voted against the tax bill. He is a Republican, and he is a candidate for the Republican nomination for lieutenant governor. And Tim O'Leary is a Democratic state representative from Melrose who voted for the tax bill. Let me ask you, Barbara, what effect do you think this tax bill will have on an economy that in Massachusetts, to put it kindly, is currently fragile?
Break it, if you want to use that particular analogy. Except that, of course, we plan to repeal it. So we're just asking the businesses to hold on, the individual taxpayers to hold on till November until we have a chance to turn this around.
Jim, don't you worry about the effect of this tax increase on an economy that's really not doing very well?
I worry about the effect of no tax increase on an economy that is in somewhat fragile condition. Barbara's saying it's going to hurt a fragile economy. What is cutting back $3 or $4 billion going to do to the economy? The interesting thing is that the vast majority of business leaders in the state finally stood up and did the right thing, said we needed taxes. They may not have liked all the pieces of this thing, but wouldn't one think that they'd be concerned about the state of the economy? And if they are so upset, why is it that virtually none of them, except the High-Tech Council, were at the State House berating every provision of this bill?
Representative O'Leary, what about you? Don't you worry that it really could have an adverse impact on the state? And the whole Massachusetts notion could come back, which, no question, it hurt us.
Well, sure, you worry about that. All of us worry about it. Nobody enjoys raising taxes, but I think Jim is right. The question became, we needed additional revenue. I don't have a $1 billion cut plan. Nobody in this room has it. Nobody outside the building has it. We needed the revenue. I was concerned that we not go after the working men and women, by increasing their income taxes. That's why I supported a broadening of the sales tax. I think it was the right approach. I would have preferred less broadening than occurred, but I think I, like most of the members of the House who voted for the bill, there were things we would have changed if we had the opportunity, but we all recognize the need for revenue. It's not a popular vote. It doesn't take courage to vote against taxes. That takes about as much courage to vote against taxes as it takes to kick a puppy. The reality is that we needed the revenue, we knew what had to be done, and we stood up and we did it. And many of us will probably pay the consequences.
Peter Torkildsen, the Democrats, at present at least, are on record against puppy kicking, and I know the Republicans have
not
yet
all
to
the
take
Democrats. Not all the Democrats.
How big a boon is this to Republican candidates in Massachusetts?
Well, I think it probably will help almost all Republican candidates this fall. Clearly the issue's on people's minds, and I happen to agree with Barbara. I mean, this is going to seriously hurt our economy. If we were back in boom times, if we hadn't already had $1.1 billion in tax and fee increases, maybe the effect would be slightly different. But right now, another $1.2 billion out of the pockets of people who work in this state, they just don't have it.
I wonder whether
the Republican president, if a Republican president can acknowledge there are no tax-free cures to what ails America, can a Republican candidate for lieutenant governor and Republican candidates for state rep tell the truth in this state?
No, silly about it. Let's talk about the issue.
Let's take the issue head on, okay? The national government hasn't had a tax increase in quite a few years.
And look at the shape it's in.
I happen to disagree with George Bush when he called for new taxes at the federal level. But in Massachusetts, there have been the 15% increase in the income tax, the increase extending the sales tax on cigarettes, the subchapter S tax increase.
You
the
voted
coupling
against
tax.
everyone, didn't you?
I voted against
everyone.
everyone.
And what did that do to the economy?
Right now, I mean, we're looking at a 2-point increase in the unemployment rate in the last 2 years. You just do not go back and say, all right, you've lost your job. Now here's your treat. We're going to make you pay more taxes.
Let me ask this question. Is there a middle ground somewhere between a $1 billion+ tax increase and repealing all of the tax and fee increases for the past X number of months?
There might have been. You know, one of the intent of our petition was because we were going to repeal this new package, we thought that their fear of the rollback part of our petition would keep them from doing the new package. And we hope that people who are elected to do the job, like Tim O'Leary, would have gone out and found that $1 billion. That is their job, to downsize government when it's required. But it didn't work, Charlie. It didn't work, and they insisted on passing another $1.6 billion, and now we're going to repeal the entire thing.
The issue that's never discussed in the tax package, and you don't discuss, nor does Peter, is the reason we did these taxes, the reason the legislature did them was to protect services.
No, they did it because they were too lazy to go in and do their job.
What business cares about is the quality of public education. We're the only state out of 50 to cut funding for public higher education in the last 2 years. Infrastructure falling apart. You have no solutions for these problems. The only honest solution was to continue to streamline, at the same time that you try to raise money fairly.
How much do you want from us? Do you want another $1 billion this year?
I want a balanced
How about
budget
next
that
year?
takes
Another
care of
$1 billion?
people's needs.
Another $2 billion next year?
Let me ask this
when
question.
When do you stop taking our money?
Let me ask this question. People on both sides criticize the other side for its extreme, or what's perceived to be an extreme position. Barbara's extreme in her position because she wants to repeal all of the taxes and fees for the past X number of months. Jim's position is extreme because he wants to keep raising taxes, as Barbara says.
Charlie,
how much more of our money?
We've opposed tax packages in the past that we consider to be unfair, including a $1 billion tax package 3 months ago that we thought was unfair to working families.
Okay, you supported this $1 billion+
Yeah, fair and necessary.
This package included
And the
that
question
package.
is this.
You supported anything that comes down the pipe because your members live off these taxes.
Let's not
play
stand in the way,
games here.
Barbara. Go ahead, Tim. I'm
That's
sorry.
the journalistic way. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, here's the question. Is there some middle ground that gets the revenue we need to pay for the services that Jim's talking about, and at the same time protects our economy from further erosion? That's the question. We're going to come back and try to answer it in just a moment. Is there some middle ground here that can protect the economy and also protect services?
I think there's a middle ground. The difficulty that a legislator has is it's never presented to the legislature as here is a position you can take either for or against the extremes that are being articulated by Mr. Braude and Ms. Anderson. For example, there are additional cuts that can be made in state government. There's no question about that. I offered additional cuts that didn't get more than 50 votes in the House. It's very difficult to get 81 votes to eliminate a program, to pare back on a program. Virtually every program the state government has a constituency. We could eliminate a lot of the cabinet secretaries. We could merge them. I voted to put a lien or to count the home as an asset of my elderly constituents who are getting ready to go to the nursing home. Republicans, to their credit, supported that. A difficult political vote. That failed in the House. That was worth $44 million. If we start to make some of those downsizing, some of those tough votes, in addition to the difficult vote on taxes, then I think we can find the middle ground. But as long as you're going to resist cuts in programs, as many of my Democratic colleagues and the Republicans in tune do, they resist any of the cuts, and then when the revenue package comes up that's necessitated by failing to make the cuts, they then walk away from that as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
but
And we'll
because
pay
you're
for the
looking
whole
at it, okay,
thing. That's
because the
wonderful.
legislature, the people who are there now, you know, our colleagues fail to make the cuts, doesn't mean the people in Massachusetts have to pay more, and that's what this tax bill does. It
Wait,
says
Peter,
they
do you think
can't deal with it responsibly, therefore the people have to pay
Peter, do you think that
$1.2 billion.
thousands-
And the key point is that's not even enough to balance the budget. They're saying it's still $300 million in deficit,
Peter,
even with that
thousands of
tax
senior
increase.
citizens were denied home care last year. 6,000 or 7,000 teachers in K through 12 laid off. We haven't made cuts in Massachusetts?
Oh,
what are you talking about? Home care, health care, child care. There have been deep cuts in services that virtually every family in the state depends upon. There has been downsizing. Do we need to streamline government more? Of course. I frankly resent the
But there's
notion
been downsizing
priority
and
is extreme.
upsizing. That's
The
all.
priorities are
$1 billion in this
backwards,
budget
okay?
already.
Because they've been
We got a lot of
cutting where
resentment
people are
going
going
around
to
here.
scream
My
the
point was
loudest,
not-
and the priorities just are not there.
My point was not that your position is extreme, but that it is perceived as extreme by some people. You
I
grant
see.
that.
Oh, well, there's no question it is perceived that way by some.
By
They're
some.
wrong, but they do
of course.
perceive it that way.
Is there a middle ground that can be reached before the election, before the CLT petition is dealt with?
Well, not before then. As it turns out, we tried that middle ground. I mean, Representative O'Leary is correct. He had ideas. A lot of people had ideas. Those ideas will never go through until they have to do it. The consolidation of the police forces, they passed that in December. The same day that they got their vote on the tax package, that consolidation is down the drain. They will do the good ideas that he's talking about. There will be a middle ground, but not until people vote for the petition and force them to do
Can I
it.
make one comment about the petition just for a second? It's interesting. You criticize the legislature. They don't make adequate cuts, and of course, you don't want to tell them what to cut. It's not your job. We've heard that before.
That's right.
Equally interestingly, not
You
only
don't want to tell me where to
not
cut
only
my
will you not tell
tax
people what to
increase
cut,
either.
in the statement you submitted to the other day to the Secretary of State that will go out to 2 million voters, you don't even say how much your petition would cut from the budget. You're asking people on November 6th to vote for something with no dollar amount.
That's the statement.
You don't tell them, is that
Jim
true?
does it. Jim's statement is 150-word
Well,
statement.
Barbara-
Says it will be a $6 billion cut
what
in
do you
3
say?
years.
Do you answer the
I'm saying
question?
that by the year 4000, it will be $6 trillion,
Is it
Jim.
true that
and if
you
that's
don't
not
say-
enough for you to make your
Barbara,
point,
is it true?
then just add on another couple hundred
How
thousand
about
years.
answering one question? Is it true that you don't even mention once what your
Oh, give
petition
us
would
a
cut?
break. We have 150 words. We say what is important to us.
But you
And
don't
what
say
was
it to the
important
voters.
Because we don't know what the petition will cut. It depends upon whether this is a constitutional plan. It depends upon whether they get the Steve Pierce and Greg Sullivan managed to amend the package
But
to
you
get
don't
rid of it.
tell the voters. That's
We
the
don't
bottom
know
line.
what it will cut because we don't know what the package is worth. We're going to repeal it, whatever it is, and Jim knows
Regardless
that.
of the
Since we
consequences.
don't know what it costs because we don't know what they're going to manage to cut back in it before November, we can't possibly give a dollar amount because we don't know what the final package is
Let me
going to look like.
raise this question. This is
So
clearly
what
going
kind
to be
of game is that?
This is clearly going to be one of the most important political questions of the year. In the fall campaign over the question of whether to repeal these taxes and fees is going to be very significant indeed. At first blush, it would seem to be a fairly cinchy thing to pass.
No. It's going to be very difficult. This is a very tough thing to do. It's a very tough decision for voters to make. This is not going to be easy. I mean, they've let things get so out of control, not Peter, but them and everybody else, that now we have to have some really tough decision-making, and it's too bad it had to be this way. The only chance that voters have now is to force them to make those tough decisions. That's our role, and that's what we're going to make them do.
Why? I mean, voters clearly are angry about the fiscal situation of the state, the way the state's been run. Are they likely to take their anger out by voting for this question?
My guess is certainly if the vote were today, CLT petition would pass. I think given an opportunity, people always vote to cut their own taxes. If there's an educational campaign, if people begin to understand how much revenue this proposal is going to take from their government and the adverse effects it could have, then the numbers may shift. But certainly, given the activities up on Beacon Hill, myself included, voting for a tax package, it's rocket fuel for her petition. But the dishonesty that's out here from my good friends on the Republican side is this perception that there's no need for taxes. And we remember George Bush, read my lips, no new taxes. And now he recognizes there's a need. No Republican in the House or the Senate has offered a cut package that would close this deficit this year. And yet not one Republican has ever acknowledged the need for the additional revenue. That's the frustration that I feel as a rank and file.
Charlie, can I speak to the likelihood of Pardon me, Peter.
Likely to pass it, sure.
I think Barbara's right. It is going to be a tough campaign, and it's probably going to be very close. Voters are angry unqualifiedly. Are they masochistic? I really think not. The bottom line is what voters want, probably more than just fair taxes, probably more than cuts, is an end to this 2-year-long nightmare. My sense is that a vote for CLT means we return to the chaos of 88 and 89, moral chaos, fiscal chaos. Nobody in the state wants it, and I think if the voters get the facts, they'll vote no.
Any legitimacy to that?
Hey, if we just give them Czechoslovakia, everything will be fine. There is no end to this.
Is that in your petition, too?
If we give in, it's not in my 150-word statement.
Okay.
If we give in, then next year we have more of the same. They will never do the cutting that Representative O'Leary talks about, that Peter talks about doing, and he has had suggestions. They won't listen to him, but they will when they have to, and then you turn it around.
Maybe there'll be a different they in there, though. Is it possible that the environment is such that this tax increase will help somebody like Steve Pierce, for example, get elected governor?
Oh, I think so very much.
Is it also rocket fuel for Republican candidates?
People are looking at Republican candidates, and the polls show the race for governor far more competitive than it's been in 20 years, which in a state where Democrats outnumber Republicans 3-1 is certainly an accomplishment. It's not enough just that people are angry, though. I mean, for Republicans to win this fall, we have to get our message out there. And what the difference is, no, we can't make up the cuts. So we are so deep in the hole that one year we can't do it. But if we bond, we bond the debt right now, and no one likes to bond, we bond the debt, we pay that off over several years. That's the way we're going to get out of the hole. If we accept this tax increase, if we accept this tax increase right now, it's going to be $1 billion a year, every year, because until the state wants to downsize government and really cut back on what they're spending, if a tax increase goes through now and there's no change in the spending pattern, next year it's going to be the same case. Another $1 billion is going to be needed,
Charlie.
and another
if
$1 billion
Democrats
is needed.
begin to act like Democrats, if they stand up for the programs they've been building for decades in this state and across the country, don't shy away from the reality that we need money to protect basic things, they'll win in November.
In our final half minute, though, isn't that a very strong message? I mean, it's the same message that Mike Dukakis got elected governor of this state with when he ran to clean out the State House and no new taxes. It's a very powerful message.
And look at his State House and look at
his lead pipe guarantee was no more legitimate than George Bush's no new taxes. And now we're hearing the same mantra from the would-be lieutenant governor.
We've got an issue right here.
People in Massachusetts can't afford to keep paying more taxes.
During the course of the rest of this campaign year, we hope very much that all of you will return to chat with us about this.
We'll continue outside for a while.
We'll continue outside. That'd be good. We're going to take a break and come right back. Stick with us.